This is the Blackberry KeyONE. And yes, it's a Blackberry. Some of you may be thinking to yourselves, how are they still competing in the smartphone market, especially in 2017? Well, to be honest, I'm not really sure how to answer that question, but here's what I think. The company has been working really hard to design a smartphone that can compete, pretty well against Apple, Samsung, and Google's offerings, yet still provide the core features that Blackberry loyalists are still fond of. Here's a fun fact. The KeyONE is my first Blackberry smartphone, and interestingly enough, when it showed up at the studio, I thought to myself that I would never consider using it as my daily driver. But here I am a few weeks after, reconsidering about switching to this guy completely because it is an awesome and solid Android smartphone. So let me walk you through my experience using the KeyONE as my daily driver for the past few weeks, right after a message from our sponsor.
So it was kind of a love at first sight, There's really nothing like this exterior. I love the metallic color, the tinted glass panel, the RGB fans at the front. It's basically a see-through case, and who doesn't love that? Your graphics card can go vertical, the top is radiator friendly, and the right side is so unique when exposed thanks to these cable covers. So you can show off everything you've got with the H500P by Cooler Master. Check it out in the description below.
Alright, so let's get pricing out of the way. The KeyONE starts at $550 US, and that's the silver edition that comes with 32GB of storage and 3GB of RAM. The black edition that I'm testing is unfortunately only available here in Canada and a few other locations, and it costs $800 Canadian, which is an expensive investment for us. The primary differences between the black and silver models is the minor spec bump. So you get 4GB of RAM versus 3, 64GB of storage versus 32, and the rest of the specs remain identical. Also, do note that Blackberry phones use Android right now rather than a proprietary operating system, and I'll talk about the experience later on. Okay, the first thing I need to address here is the design and the build quality of the KeyONE. Let's actually start with the design, and that's kind of obvious when you take a glance at it for the first time. It looks like a Blackberry. You'll notice that it features the signature physical keyboard, the smaller screen-to-body ratio when compared to some other smartphones that are taking the bezel-less approach. The side buttons are chamfered, which might seem like a minor thing, but it really adds to the aesthetics of the device. Blackberry has implemented the convenience key that's located right beside the volume rockers, and it can be programmed to perform any action you'd like. For instance, I can have it open an app, or set it to turn on the flashlight, or trigger Google's voice search, or even completely turn it off. So Samsung, you better be taking notes. Now the problem with this button is its placement. I'd much rather have it switched for the power button that's on the left side of the phone because that would ergonomically make a lot more sense, at least for me. But I can assure you that from a feature standpoint, it's a hell of a lot better than the Bixby button found on Samsung devices. The main chassis is constructed out of aluminum and it feels rock solid in the hands, guys. This is seriously built like a tank and I wouldn't worry about long-term durability. Although the lack of water and dust resistance is disappointing, especially for a 2017 release, so I'm hoping that they'll include that in the next revision. The soft textured back is a welcoming change from glass backs that I've encountered from other flagship smartphones this year, plus it helps grip the phone a lot better, but be mindful that it could pick up grease over time. The 4.5-inch IPS LCD display was definitely an odd transition for me personally, since I've been using smartphones with larger displays for a really long time. Either way, the screen features a resolution of 1620 by 1080, so that's a 3:2 aspect ratio, and that actually takes a significant hit with screen real estate. There's really nothing much I can say other than the fact that you'll be restricted with the amount of content being displayed on screen, especially when browsing the web or checking social feeds, and then there's consuming video. That took me a while to get used to because, for one, the physical keyboard gets in the way between you and the content, and the smaller screen means you won't be able to enjoy native 21:9 content as much as you would say something like the Galaxy S8 or the new iPhone. Now on a positive note, you can take advantage of the scroll feature built in with the keyboard to keep your thumb from reaching up and smudging your screen, but if you do get the screen dirty, and you know you will, I recently found this. The eye roller. It claims to sanitize your device screen while removing all the surface dirt by simply rolling over it. At first, I thought that the eye roller's claims were too good to be true, but look at how well it works. It sure beats carrying around a bottle of cleaning solution and a microfiber cloth. You can find a link to buy the eye roller in the description down below if you're interested. Coming back to the display on the KeyONE, the colors are just as expected for an IPS LCD panel. They're nice and vibrant, albeit not as super saturated as AMOLED displays. I prefer IPS over AMOLED because they look more natural to the eye. The viewing angles were great, plus I didn't notice any weird color shift while tilting the display. However, the screen doesn't get as bright as I'd like it to be in broad daylight conditions, so if you intend to use the KeyONE outdoors more often, you're not going to be pleased. Moving on, let's talk about that keyboard because it's one of BlackBerry's key selling features. In fact, it's one of the main reasons why there are still some BlackBerry enthusiasts out there. Now for me, switching from a virtual keyboard to a physical one took some time to get used to, but interestingly enough, I started to love typing on it over time. Everything from the tactile buttons to keyboard shortcuts like copy and paste worked fantastic. It also has a few more tricks up its sleeve, like being able to customize all 52 buttons to quickly access apps or important contacts directly from the home screen, but be mindful that it only works when you're using BlackBerry's stock launcher. Now, I typically run Nova Launcher on every Android device that I test, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to take advantage of those shortcuts. I found that to be a bit odd, but it is what it is. The tiny spacebar also acts as a fingerprint reader, and it's fast when it comes to unlocking the device. There are also other touch-enabled gestures like scrolling through web pages or emails, but that was a bit finicky with some other apps like Nova and Talon, just to name a few. The flick typing feature does a pretty good job predicting words, so you can flip up to register the desired word or flip backwards to erase it if you made a mistake. And I've taken advantage of that a lot of times during the process of getting used to this physical keyboard. That being said, I still missed a few features from the virtual keyboard. One of them was glide typing, where I was able to quickly draft words by simply gliding through keys, and Google was pretty good at that, and it was pretty fast too. The other one was instant access to emojis and GIFs, and Gboard was pretty smart enough to implement that within the keyboard. Now you could still access emojis with the KeyONE, but it involves a few more steps to activate that, plus it consumes half of the already smaller 4.5-inch display. I also wished if BlackBerry included a dedicated number row for quick access, but that would shrink the display even further, so it's kind of a dead end. I've also had a few instances where I would accidentally trigger the home button while scrolling using the keyboard. Now they could fix this by replacing the capacitive navigating buttons with an on-screen option, so A, that could eliminate those accidental triggers, and B, it would actually add some more screen real estate. Now be mindful that these are my personal suggestions, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the physical keyboard. Are you sold on the whole gesture implementation? Leave a comment down below. The software experience on the KeyONE was great. BlackBerry did partner with Google to run Android OS on their smartphones, and if my memory serves me well, I think the Priv was their first smartphone to run Android. With the KeyONE, you're getting an almost close to stock Android interface, and I appreciate that. I was able to customize the UI just like every other smartphone I've tested, so that was awesome. Out of the box, the unit runs on Android 7.1.1, but BlackBerry has promised the 8.0 Oreo update very soon. Now, there are a few more features baked into the OS. One of them is Blackberry Hub. Essentially, it's a one-stop central hub that consolidates your messages, emails, calendar events, social media notifications, and phone calls. Personally, I didn't take advantage of that since it isn't as robust or feature-rich as those individual applications, but it's a nice inclusion nonetheless. And then there's BBM, which really isn't exclusive since you can download this app on any other Android device. BlackBerry has preloaded the Detect Privacy Monitoring app, which is guaranteed to receive monthly security updates, plus it constantly monitors apps, so it'll alert you if an app is accessing your camera, microphone, or accessing contacts. And while these might sound similar to what Google offers, BlackBerry has built a solid foundation on top of the software to ensure users' data won't be compromised. They actually have an entire section on their website discussing how they've taken some security measures with the KeyONE, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. Performance on this device was fantastic. The model I have in hand is the Black Edition that sports the Snapdragon 625 CPU, so not the higher-end 835, but in all honesty, it performs just fine for what I do, like checking email, browsing the web, watching YouTube videos, the normal drill. Multitasking was fast, and I didn't notice any slowdowns thanks to the inclusion of 4 GB of RAM. As for storage, you have 64 GB to work with, plus it can be expanded via microSD. Now, by far, my most favorite part about the KeyONE is its battery life. It's got a 3500 mAh battery, so while that might not seem as big as the one found in the Pixel 2 XL, the S8 Plus, and most definitely not even closer to the new Razer phone, I was easily able to power through a couple of days with just a single charge. How? Well, the answer actually lies within the design. Given the smaller screen-to-body ratio and a much more power-efficient CPU, this thing can easily get you 6.5 to 7 hours of screen on time, plus it supports Quick Charge 3.0, and it charges via USB Type-C. My usage normally consists of checking Twitter, Instagram, messaging, responding to emails, catching up on a few YouTube videos, and that's about it. But that could vary from one user to the next. Last but not least, let's talk about the camera. And I'm just going to say it out right now, it's amazing. And if that sounds surprising to you, especially coming from a BlackBerry smartphone, well, you're in for a surprise. So the rear camera sports a 12 megapixel sensor with an f2.0 aperture, and interestingly enough, it's the exact same sensor found on the Pixel XL, not to be confused with the newer 2XL. I turned on HDR for the best results and left everything else in auto, and the samples you're witnessing right now are coming straight out of the camera without any alterations in post. All I can say is that there's great dynamic range, detail is precise, colors are not super saturated, but most importantly, the sensor does a really good job exposing the highlights, and it does a really good job in low light as well. The image processing is a tad better on the Pixel XL, to be honest, but the KeyONE does a really good job producing a cleaner and sharp image. Here are a few more samples. Alright guys, so the rear-facing camera can shoot 4K up to 30 frames per second, but it doesn't come with image stabilization. You can only enable image stabilization when you're shooting in 1080p, but that's about it. I mean, the quality looks really good. I mean, I like the dynamic range. Like I said, it's using the same sensor as the one found on the Pixel, and like I said, we've got great detail. Here, let's take a close-up shot. See how it looks. I think this is a solid camera. Well, that was my experience using the Blackberry KeyONE. You see, this device isn't for everyone out there, especially for the ones who consume a lot of media content, because the 4.5-inch display is just too small for that task. But if you're still a true Blackberry loyalist, rocking say something like the Priv, or even an older device like the Pearl or the Bold, upgrading to the KeyONE makes a lot more sense in 2017. The physical keyboard is fantastic to type with, and the built-in gestures is a smart implementation. The build quality is just far beyond what you would expect on a 2017 flagship, and when you pair that up with Android's latest operating system, you're looking at a device that's designed to get work done. Now, if you're willing to give the KeyONE a try, just be aware that there's a lot of things to get used to, and the first one obviously is the keyboard. You're gonna have to take some time to get used to the physical buttons, and of course getting used to that smaller display. But other than that, this is just an awesome Android smartphone. In fact, if you're looking for a Blackberry smartphone powered by Android without a physical keyboard, the Blackberry Motion is a great alternative. Albeit they just announced it recently and it's only available in Canada. I'm hoping that they will include availability in the US at some point later down the road. But it's great that we have these options from a company that's kind of almost non-existent for a lot of people out there. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Blackberry KeyONE. What do you guys think about this device? Are you willing to spend $550 on something that isn't as popular or sort of shares similar aspects of a full-sized flagship smartphone from Samsung or Google? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm Ibor with HardwareCanucks. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more similar content, and we'll see you in the next one.